And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doink Podcast. My name is Brendan Deek. Thanks so much for tuning in today, everybody. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. You can also rate the podcast and review the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. It would also be greatly appreciated. Really cool episode for you today. Really excited for this one. I am joined by the anchor of Sports Center on ESPN, avid Philadelphia sports fan, Kevin Negandhi. One of my favorites is joining me. Kevin, what's going on?
Brendan, it's good to see you, man. Fly, Eagles, fly. It's been an interesting week as we get ready for the Cowboys, but lots to discuss.
Yeah, this is it was all fun and dandy, I guess fine and dandy. After the Bears win, it was a little bit of a tough go, but they end up securing the win. And some news broke down on Monday that kind of maybe not shocked the world. I actually, when that hit happened on Jalen Hurts, I think you the same way, like something was in your brain going, nothing's all right here, right?
Especially how he laid down an extra beat on the ground.
Yeah.
And at one point I was like, did he get the wind knocked out of him? That was my first thought. Oh no, did he get the wind knocked out of him? Because the ball was secure underneath his stomach. And then, you saw the defensive lineman land on him at 300 plus pounds. But when he threw that ball, like right afterwards to Devontae, and then of course that beautiful 68-yard dime to A.J. Brown in the fourth quarter, you're like, all right, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised by it. I was more stunned that when we got the news to see what he did after the injury. And that just shows you the toughness of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, apparently. So I think it was Jeff McClain of the Philly Inquirer said that when he was lying on the ground, he told Milo Allen to pick him the F up. He didn't want to stay down. So Jalen Hurts is definitely one tough guy. What's your concern level with the injury going forward?
So we don't know the extent. Each type of separated shoulder, has different levels, right? Especially if it's your throwing shoulder. We don't know the extent of it. So I don't have a concern right now because my belief is that this is a couple of weeks and it'll be okay. If it was a must-win situation, I think he'd probably be out there Saturday night. I don't think he should play on Saturday because he doesn't have to. Thank you, Jaguars, and what they did in overtime. And then the final two games are at home against the Saints and Giants, and all you need is one. So to me, it'd be a great idea to rest him. You beat the Saints, and then you could rest him against the Giants, and then you get the bye, right? So my only concern is just I felt like, and I think we go through all this, Sirianni and Steichen have done a phenomenal job. They just sometimes try to get too fancy when you have a fantastic running back who's been playing really well the previous 3 weeks, in Miles Sanders. Why is Hurts carrying the ball so much? Like specifically the Giants game the week before, I was like, what are we doing? Why are we going between the tackles here on number one? Like, no more. So that's my concern, that they get a little too reliant on number one's running ability, and then naturally this is going to happen. So that's my concern moving forward here on making sure that one is still a integral part of the offense without constantly calling his number on run plays.
Yeah, so I actually did some stat digging because it felt like to me they were running Jalen Hurts too much during that game as well. And then when I dug up some stats, he had 17 carries in total. 2 of them were kneel downs. And then the 3 of them were scrambles. So he had 12 design runs in that game. Now that can be put towards his own read as well, right? So if he holds on to the ball himself and takes off. So that's a decision that he has to make. So it's not just all design runs. So the stat is a little skewed, but I agree. I felt like he was run too much during that game. Miles Sanders ended up carrying till the second quarter, which I thought was way too long. I don't know what happened to Miles Sanders in the week leading up to that game. I don't know how he ended up in Sirianni's doghouse, especially how well he played the week before. So I feel like they have to kind of let it all loose in the playoffs, running Jalen Hurts as much as possible. But I felt like that game they did maybe put him in harm's way a little bit. But that's how he's the MVP, right? That's how he's been not the MVP, one of the MVP candidates, and that's how he's been so good as his running ability. So it's kind of hard. You have to weigh both outcomes.
And I completely agree with you, Brendan. In a situation like you mentioned, like in the playoffs, all hands on deck. Against the Bears in the first quarter, why are you in those windy conditions? why aren't you including 26 in the offense, right? And I understand Miles dropped the ball inside the red zone for the Bears, and that got Chicago's offense back in the game. But like, you got to go back to find some consistency in getting 26 the ball or getting Boston Scott involved, making sure that listen, the biggest game or sequence in the Eagles' entire season was the second half of the Cowboys game, the first meeting, right? Mm-hmm. And what do? We're going to run the football. And I've always said this, the MVP, or the most critical position on the Eagles, is the entire offensive line.
Yeah.
And that is your strength of all strengths. Then make sure you're running behind that strength. And I understand, and I appreciate you doing the research. There are 12 design runs there. Specifically in a game like this, they're throwing the ball. They had 12 passes of 20-plus yards.
Yeah, it was weird. That was the game plan for them to go deep. It didn't. It was odd. Like I felt like
the conditions, right?
Yeah, it was. It did work a little bit, right? Like Devonta Smith and AJ Brown had over 110 yards each. AJ Brown had a career high. Devonta Smith had 5 catches for like 126. So I guess it worked, but it did. That was their game plan, to attack the Bears deep. Like that's what the team is week going.
Too many times it's let's go for the home run ball. Mm-hmm. Oh, now it's 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10. Let's get number 1 the ball, right? How about we establish a little bit in the first downs? Let's get 26 the ball a little bit. Let's get some momentum a little bit, and then get 2nd and 6 and see if. And it's going to help immensely having Dallas Goedert back in this game.
Yeah.
Specifically for that mid-range 12 to 15-yard pass that I think they were so successful with, and is spreading everything out to be able to get the long ball down the field.
I'm happy you brought up Goddard, because I had a tweet about this yesterday. In the game that Gardner Minshew did start last year against the Jets, Goddard was awesome. 6 catches, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was Minshew's kind of biggest weapon. He had 2 touchdowns, I think, in the first quarter. They were both before the Jets could even blink. So if Minshew does have to play, I do think Goddard coming back is massive just for him in general. And when I was watching the Jets tape, the Eagles-Jets in 2021, a whole lot of Jalen Reagor, a whole lot of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So this is a different team for Gardner Minshew to kind of succeed with, if he does have to play. But Kevin, what's your favorite matchup going into this Dallas game? Because there's a lot you can look at. Michael Parsons against the offensive line. Hassan Reddick is playing absolutely lights out lately. He was an absolute monster in that game against the Bears. Going back and watching that game, it was better the second time around. He could have had 7 sacks if you want. If Fields wasn't running around like crazy, he could have had at least 7 sacks. But Kevin, I guess what's your favorite matchup hanging into this game?
Yeah, Reddick has been phenomenal, by the way. Yeah. Howie gets a lot of credit going after him and getting him at I don't want to say cheap price, but a very good price and over-delivering, right?
Very good price. I sorry to interrupt you there quickly, but I actually, like, his contract, like, I was looking at some guys paid higher than him. Carl Lawson, Leonard Floyd, Emmanuel Ogbah, Bud Dupree, Chandler Jones. Like, it was a steal.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And that's the much-needed speed they had to add on the side, right? That we've been waiting for on the defensive end. So I think the Michael Parsons matchup against the offensive line is the one everybody's got circled. That line has heard all the things that Mike has talked about. And listen, I think Dan Orlovsky's thought process was incredible in that first meeting. Go after number 11. Literally go after him. And that's how you neutralize him. And the Eagles did that, especially with their run game. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I think also they ran a lot of college concepts at Micah and that Dallas defense and Dan Quinn in that first meeting. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to see how everybody adjusts. Everything's about adjustments, right? So how do you handle that adjustment on the Dallas side? Because I'm sure they will. And then how do you handle that on the offensive line side for the Eagles specifically? So I can't wait for that matchup. That to me is the one that I circle immediately. And the other matchup, I want to kind of see how it plays out. I kind of want to see Darius Slay, and I feel like Darius Slay is going to have a monster game. One of those games where he's going to have, a pick, at least one pick. He's going to create, as the tendency of Dak is sometimes to force the ball, and are they going to pressure Dak enough where the playmakers on the outside can step up and make a play. And listen, we all know the impact of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, how much they miss him when it comes to just being a ball hawk. So I think a guy like Darius Slay is in that Minnesota game, Darius Slay said, I'm the guy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to shut down 18. There's a reason why this team is this offense moves. It's because, Justin Jefferson. And he shut him down. And I think that's one of those – Darius loves these moments. So I'm looking forward to the Slay matchup if we see him versus CeeDee Lamb.
It's interesting because the Eagles, you haven't really seen a lot of the Eagles secondary the last 3 games because look at the past offenses they played. They played the Tennessee Titans. They didn't really move the ball as much as they are. The New York Giants didn't at all. Even last week, the Chicago Bears, they got all their yards basically through Justin Fields running. So it's been a quiet kind of last 3 weeks for the Eagles pass defense, just from lack of opportunities. They haven't thrown the ball as much. Like they haven't been turning the ball over. They haven't been creating turnovers, and they're still winning games well on defense, which I think is a very good sign because this defense was very turnover reliant. Before at the beginning of the season, they were, I think, first in turnovers from the majority of the season. I don't know if they still are created turnovers. Sorry, my apologies, but they were very reliant on that to have success, and it hasn't been that way the last 3 weeks, and they're still getting wins. So I do think that's very important. And then,
to your point, Brendan, and the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you can go back, right? They have made sure that defensive front, and Gannon's done a better job here to attack the quarterback, right? Yeah, sure. You're making sure you're slowing down the running back because that's the focal point of the 3 offenses you just talked about. Specifically, the Titans, the Giants, and what we saw. I think there was another guy that was pretty big in one of those weeks it was before the Titans where they went through a run.
The Packers game was before
Packers game, right?
Yeah.
And the defensive line dictated the entire game, right? And I know, Dillon and Jones went off specifically, but like that line, they were in Aaron Rodgers' face the entire game. They made sure they created havoc. And I think that defensive line and what Gannon's done the last month has been much better than what we saw, I think, about 6 weeks ago.
Okay, so you're around some of the best NFL experts in the world at ESPN. You work for NFL Live sometimes. You're on SportsCenter. You're around some of the most knowledgeable NFL people. My question is what is the kind of what's everyone talking about in the Eagles at the ESPN offices? What's the vibe around the Eagles at the ESPN offices? Just give me what you're hearing about this team while you're at work.
And listen, I'm really lucky. I spend my Saturdays on college football in studio talking college football with Booger McFarland, but he works on Sundays as well with Boomer, Chris Berman on NFL Primetime. So he's watching all the games and he's doing Monday Night Countdown on the road. So I hear what he has to say. Ryan Clark's always in studio after NFL Live. Marcus Spears, Dan Orlovsky. I am really lucky to work with, and Mina Kimes. I'm really lucky to work with, I think, the best in the business and the brightest minds, like you brought up, when it comes to looking at tape and understanding tape and explaining it, right? All of them love what the Eagles are doing. All of them believe the Eagles are the 1 seed. All of them have just, I'm the one who's saying, hey, who do we need to be worried about? And they all tell me, the natural stuff like the 49ers, and you got to worry about their defense and what's going to happen there. But they all view the Eagles with high respect as a 1 seed. Now, that's in the NFC. When, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, they come in the mix, and it's a different type of conversation.
Yeah.
But specifically in the NFC, and that's actually my only focus. I'm not worried about the AFC. I'm worried about let's get the 1 seed and let's move on, right? Secure that, and then let's take it week by week. That they talk about just the Eagles' ability to beat you in multiple ways and the balance that they have. One game, they'll run the ball. One game, they're going to pass the ball. They talk and they rave about the growth of Jalen Hurts. Dan has not been shy about that publicly, as well as Ryan Clark. And Mina Kimes talks about that as well. They talk about the defensive front. The one common denominator is just the growth of Sirianni and Hurts in one season. And they're aware, like this, there's mad respect. They are aware of all the talk about how ESPN views the Eagles, but it's not them. They're not the ones that do that. They're not the ones that are pushing any type of agenda. And I don't want to say there's anybody specific pushing an agenda. It's just what are the topics? Jerry Jones talk. All right, Cowboys, right? It's Jerry Jones. It's Dak Prescott, right? Cowboys are very much like the Yankees. Hate them, like them, you're watching. Very much like Notre Dame. Hate them, like them, you're watching. And you know what I tell everybody? Good. That's exactly what we saw in 2017 when everybody counted the Eagles out. I'm okay with that. And they laugh about it because they understand. But when it comes to respect and understanding, it's the Eagles as the 1 seed in the NFC. There's no question with the people I talk about.
Yeah, I think that's right too. Like, I think the 49ers and Cowboys are definitely good seasons, and they're definitely teams to worry about. But like, they're 13-1 right now. The Eagles are absolutely rolling. Like, the one loss was against the Commanders, and it took a Quez Watkins fumble. It took a bunch of chaotic penalties. Like, everything had to go right on that Monday night game for the Commanders to win. Like, they could easily be 14-0 right now. And you brought up how your colleagues talk about the growth of Sirianni in the offense. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember? After the Las Vegas Raiders game last year, they were 2-5.
Yep.
Do you remember the fertilizing speech?
Yeah,
our speech. Do you know that they are 20-4 since that speech?
Yes,
including the playoffs.
And Brendan, to your point, what happened that following week? They played the Lions.
Yeah, and
what did he do? He said, "Let me make sure I'm changing my game plan to the talent I have, and let's run the football."
Yep.
And that is Nick Sirianni adjusting, saying, "I'm not going to be stubborn. Let me look at who I have and take advantage of the parts and pieces and the players' talents to get the game plan." Yep. And I really admire that in him adjusting that way and him understanding that.
And I think that's been the best part of him as a head coach. Like, head coaches can get really stubborn in the NFL. They like what they like. They do what they do. This is my playbook. We're going to run it. If it doesn't work, then we're screwed. And that's an old school style coaching thought. You have to adapt to the players around you. You have to work with the talent that you have. And Nick Sirianni has done that perfectly. And that's just a great sign as an Eagles fan to kind of see that your head coach adapts to the players that are around you. I guess my last kind of Eagles related question is, what is, I guess, your biggest concern for this team over the next 4 weeks? Let's take out the Jalen Hurts shoulder injury. What's something that you're maybe a little worried about that could come to fruition? Just kind of let's go down negative alley a little bit here, I guess.
My two biggest concerns, and this was before the Hurts injury, was health. Malata's shoulder in the beginning of the season, that bugged him all, for a while. As well as Lane Johnson, losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Like, those are my biggest concerns. That's why the 1 seed, I think, is so critical. And my second biggest concern is the special teams. It feels like, now they were okay this past week, but it feels like, Michael Clay is always front and center on Monday saying, I got to fix that up, and Sirianni's talking about the frustration of the field position and the coverage units. I have a bad feeling that if it's not cleaned up, it's gonna cost us a big play in the postseason on a return. And we all know in those type of games, it's who makes the first mistake in the postseason, right? And then does that now change the momentum of a game? So my biggest, aside from injuries, is this special teams unit making sure that they cover their butts when it comes to punt returns and kick returns and giving up really good. I think, especially in cold weather games, when you watch that 49ers Packers game, nothing made sense in the playoff. That playoff game, nothing made sense.
Yeah.
Field position made sense in that game. In games like that dictate everything. And that's what I do not want for the Eagles to bite them in the butt. Something that they can clean up, and they had all season to clean up, and then it's just going to, I think, backfire for them in the postseason. What do you think, Brendan? Is that your concern?
I think turnovers on offense is the biggest concern. I feel like, but that's just every team worries about turnovers on offense, right? But the games that they have struggled with, they've lost the turnover battle. The Washington game, the Indianapolis Colts game was another one where they almost lost and they turned the ball over a lot. The Bears game last week, right? Like, little dinky, stupid turnovers. The special teams is a good one as well because we go back to the playoffs with the punt block and the 49ers Packers game, like you said. the Packers, that game against the Eagles is just this year. Like all their drives started at the 45th yard line. It took Jalen Hurts putting on an absolute dominant performance for them to put up 40 points to win that game. So I guess field position on special teams and turnovers on offense is probably my biggest concern. But again, those are generic concerns that every team most likely has, right? So there's not really a lot to kind of pinpoint. So that's why I wanted to ask your question if you had maybe a little answer that I haven't thought of. But okay, I only got you for a couple more minutes here. It's Eagles Cowboys week. I got to ask you, you've been an Eagles fan for a very long time. You grew up in the Philly area. What's your favorite Eagles Cowboys moment?
There's a handful of them. The pickle juice game with Deuce Staley, right? Remember the pickle juice game?
So I'm full disclosure, I'm 27. So I was an Eagles fan. My first kind of remember of Eagles football is 2002. So that's the playoffs. So little before my time, I think. But yeah. You can go obviously before that if you want.
I will have to, right?
Yeah.
The Barry Switzer 4th and 1 stop in 1995, where he kept on going with the same play, and that's when the Cowboys were, 3-time, or they were on their way to winning their 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years, and we were just trying to figure things out. The Deuce Staley pickle juice game. The Wilbur Montgomery 81 game in the NFC Conference Championship, where they had the chance to go to the Super Bowl, and Montgomery was incredible. I was at the Scab game where Buddy Ryan, I was in that end zone. Buddy Ryan called the fake, and Randall threw the touchdown, which was incredible. The Bounty Bowl, which was unbelievable. What they did to Troy Aikman his rookie season, that defensive front, they just destroyed him. So it's so many ones. The one, I think you could, you're aware of this one. The one that it was 2007, 2006, 2007, the Chris Clemens game.
44-6, baby. 44-6. Yeah.
Yes. T.O.'s a Cowboy, and what they did, everything about it. It may have been 2009. I laughed so much.
It was 2008 season for them was it time to get in the playoffs? What I remember about that day was the Buccaneers had to lose to the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was like the Bucs were like 7 to 8 point favorites.
Yes.
And then the Raiders just ran all over the Bucs. They win, and then the game was flexed, of course, the day before that or the week before that to the night game. So that was for the division, and it was just an absolute shit kicking.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that game was comical. Like everything about that game was one of those, I had it on DVR for several years, and I would just watch the game and I would just laugh, especially, B-Dog's on that team and just everything about the defense. So there's a lot of great memories of Eagles Cowboys. Notice I'm not sharing the other one. I mean, the Mark Sanchez Thanksgiving game.
Yeah,
right? That was another incredible.
One. Yeah.
So it's been a good run. And that, listen, there's nothing better than that rivalry. If you're a Philadelphia fan, it's just something different. I explained to my kids last year that, hey, Eagles can go winless, and if their 2 wins are against the Cowboys, we call that a successful year. That's just how it's always going to be.
All right, Kevin, I have to let you go. Time's up, but I would love to have you on maybe another time to go deep down your career path, because you've had a really interesting kind of rise to where you are. So, and I would love for listeners to know that. So we'll talk another time, but I got to let you go now. Before you do go, why don't you plug in where the listeners can find you on social media, where they can find your work? Just let everyone know where they can find all your stuff.
So Kevin Negandhi, that's basically at Twitter, Kevin Negandhi, Instagram as well at Kevin Negandhi. And if you ever watch SportsCenter 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, college football on ABC on Saturdays, I'll be at the Peach Bowl for Ohio State, Georgia, and then the national championship. And, I'm around. I don't say no a lot. So you'll see me working, especially during this postseason when the Eagles hopefully have a long run.
Yeah, maybe I could have you on after the parade and your voice is gone and you're covering the parade. You can't speak, and you can come on the Double Doink podcast and we can relish in some Eagles Super Bowl victory.
Brendan, 1 week at a time. 1 week at a time. All right?
I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyways, thanks, Kevin, so much, man. Really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays to everybody.
You too.